In my last video, I showed you the first version of the AI app I built to talk to my financial data, and while it worked for simple questions, it started to break when I asked something more complicated. For example, when I asked the app to compare my average monthly grocery spending between 2 years, it gave me the wrong answer. And since then, I fixed that problem. But while fixing it, I actually found several other bugs hiding in the app. So in this video, I want to show you how I actually debug these problems. And there are two things that help me the most: having a clear mental model of the application's flow and having proper logging at each step. Hey, if you're new here, my name is He. I make videos about web development, AI, and the things I'm currently experimenting with while building software. And this video is a continuation of the project I showed you in my last video, an AI-powered finance app that lets me ask questions about my expenses in natural language. So if you haven't watched my previous videos where I introduced this project, I'll put the link in the description, so feel free to check that one out. So the first thing that helped me debug the app was actually stepping back and looking at the entire flow. When I was building the app, I was mostly thinking about individual pieces: the front end, the back end, the AI model, the database. But when something went wrong, I needed to understand how all of these pieces interacted. So I wrote down the actual flow of a user query, and it looks like this. So first, the user sends some questions to the front end. The question is sent to my backend. The backend sends that question to an OpenAI model and asks it to generate a SQL query. The SQL query comes back to the backend. The backend then executes that SQL query against the database. The database returns the result. The backend sends that result to the AI model again, so it can turn the raw database result into a response that is easier for the user to understand. And finally, that response is sent back to the front end. So the backend is essentially acting as the middleman, connecting all of these different steps. And once I started thinking about the application this way, debugging became much easier. Because instead of asking, why is my app giving me the wrong answer, I could ask, at which step did the result become wrong? And that turned out to be a much better question. So let's go back to the problem from the last video. I asked, compare my average monthly grocery spending in 2025 and 2026, and the result was wrong. So at first, I just knew that the final answer wasn't what I expected. But now that I had a mental model of the flow, I could start checking each step. Was the front end sending the correct question? Yes. Did the backend receive it? Yes. What SQL did the AI generate? So this is where I found the problem. The SQL generated calculates the average of individual grocery transactions instead of grouping the spending by month and calculating the average monthly spending. So the database was actually doing exactly what I told it to do. The problem was that the SQL query was wrong. So once I knew that, the fix became much more straightforward. I added an additional instruction to the AI explaining how questions involving average spending should be handled, particularly when the user is asking for an average across months. So in this case, logging the intermediate SQL wasn't just useful for debugging, it helped me understand where the AI's interpretation of my question differed from my intention. But then I ran into another problem. Sometimes the app would just fail to return a response to the front end, and this one was a little more confusing. So from the user's perspective, all I could see was nothing. So again, I went back to the flow. The front end sent the question. The backend received it. The backend called the AI model. So what happened after that? I added more logging around each step so I could actually see what was happening. And eventually, I found something interesting. So there were cases where the AI didn't return a SQL query at all. Instead, it returned a plain text response. And this exposed a problem in my backend. My backend was assuming that the AI would always return a valid SQL query. But if the AI returned plain text instead, the backend would try to process that response as a SQL. And eventually the request would fail. And because I didn't handle that case properly, the error propagated all the way to the front end as a blank response. So again, the logging helped me trace the problem backwards. So the app's definitely still not perfect. I'll keep testing it with more complicated questions and sharing what I learned along the way. So if you want to see how this project evolves from the first version I showed you in the previous video, consider subscribing. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.